The time for convening having arrived, the Senate will now come to order. At this time, I'd like to ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber. This time, I'd like to recognize the distinguished senator from the 53rd, who's back with us.
Mr. President, it's wonderful to be back in the Peach State, the Empire State of the South. We had a great time in our nation's capital, overlooking the signing of the China trade agreement, first time in history of this great nation. A moment in history in this great state was in 1957, the song Little Richard recorded Lucille, and the senator from Macon of the 26th, I think, inspired that song. Also in 1919, the 18th Amendment that ratified and created prohibition. The senator from the 7th is always concerned about that. Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
Just so you're aware, the senator from the 56th did an amazing job filling in for you yesterday. Facts and figures were virtually priceless. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the secretary's desk at this time. First reading of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 298 by Senator Underman of the 45th, a bill to be titled an act to amend Title 16 and 20 of the OCGA relating to crimes and offenses in education respectively so as to provide protections for and education to minors regarding smoking and vaping, to revise and provide certain definitions
regulated industries.
Senate Bill 299 by Senator Martin of the 9th, a bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 3 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated related to general provisions regarding insurance so as to require insurers that issue disability
insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 300 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions of the Department of Community Affairs.
Government oversight.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
It's now time for our morning roll call. It is now time for our morning roll call for those of you all out in the hallway. Are there any motions to excuse? The chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 43rd for business in the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 43rd is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 38th. Her mother just went in the hospital.
Without objection, the senator from the 38th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. All right, it's now time for a morning devotional. I'd like to ask that all senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. I'd like to recognize the minority leader to introduce our chaplain of the day and to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. President, members of the Senate, I am honored to introduce a friend of mine and a great public servant in our community. You know, this is my last opportunity to introduce a pastor of the day. So you know it's special that I picked this individual, and he's been here before. But Reverend Vandy Simmons from Antioch AME Church is a special man. When the church was looking to replace Bishop Wicker, I thought they would have a great challenge to meet someone and bring somebody who would continue his role of service. And, you know, they exceeded my expectations. You know, they looked around everywhere they could and found Reverend Vandy Simmons to come up to Georgia. You know, he was a competitor when he was young. He's in the Hall of Fame down in Tipton in football and sports. He pastored a church in that area too, but through the ministry he worked, and almost competitively, I think he outworked most of his colleagues on how many people he could serve to, heal, mend, and grow. In his church in DeKalb County, Antioch AME, he has reached out to many communities that have needed him. From seniors to refugees, he's helped people. That the church itself has a senior center, a senior living community that they help build, develop, and have hundreds of seniors that now have a quality of life that they wouldn't have gotten without the support and the thoughtfulness of Reverend Vandy Simmons, and the fact that he continues that and has continued to make this church grow. You know, when you come down and shake his hands when this service is over, I think you will feel, as you enter into his space, that aura of a man who cares, the man who is empathetic, who is committed to God and committed to public service. So it is my honor to introduce to you Reverend Vandy Simmons. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Henson, an honorary member of Antioch AME Church. And we certainly thank God for our Lieutenant Governor, Lieutenant Governor Duncan, and all of you state senators who serve us so well. We thank God for you and all of you who are in this time and space. Somebody said I had 5 minutes, so I don't want to waste too much of my 5 minutes. But I do appreciate this opportunity to share with you. Any of us who have been called feel like we have something to say. And so hopefully and prayerfully you can be blessed from what I have to share on this day. I want to share with you from a very familiar text for what I would call some church professionals. 1 Samuel, the 17th chapter. The narrative about David and Goliath. Some of you already knew what I was talking about. And I just want to share the 24th through the 29th verse. And I always remind my congregation not to allow the familiarity of the text to close your mind, because God's Spirit is so fresh and always saying something new and fresh to us. Listen, 1 Samuel 17th chapter, as we look at that, start at the 24th verse. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and they were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why camest thou down here? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, what have I done? Is there not a cause? And I just want to share with you for a few minutes, and I pray and hope that it resonates the rest of the year, about a giant cause. In fact, I chose the King James translation, and I'm not always in favor of the King James translation. I love the 23rd Psalm from King James. Don't seem like no other translation can say it like the King on that, and the Lord's Prayer. But there are some other translations I prefer at times. But this particular translation, the 29th verse got my attention from the King. None of the other translations say it like the 29th verse says it in the King. And David said, what have I not done? Is there not a cause? And so I just want to share with you just for a few moments about a giant cause. A giant cause. And one of the things, most of you are familiar with the David and the Goliath story of how David conquers this great Goliath from the Philistines who threatened the Israelites. And we get all excited about that story. It's a great story. And even folk who don't believe like that story. It's a great story. But I like to deal with what the behind the scene. What do we really gather from it? And I'm sure because this is a familiar passage, maybe I will share some things that you've already heard or you already know. But I trust and hope, whether you know it or not, that you find some conviction in some of the things that I feel that help us in our giant cause. I trust and hope that all of you who are sitting here, who have been elected to be here to represent and serve your constituents in the great state of Georgia, that you are here for a cause. A cause. Let's start with that. That you're not just here just to be here, but you're here for a great cause. So the first thing that David helped us with is that we all should understand and realize if we're in the position we're in to be a difference maker and to make a difference, then we ought to be in it for the cause. Not just for our own agenda, not just for our own partisan politics, and I do understand that, but we should be in it for a greater cause, something bigger than we are, or our own personal agenda. And so I hear David as he look at his brother. Hey, this man is threatening our people. He's threatening our faith. He's threatening our belief. We have to do something. Is there not a cause? And so somebody, if somebody asks you why you run, why you here, you ought to be able to say, I'm here for a cause, a great cause, a giant cause, if you would. That's the first thing. I just pray that folk who are representing me are in it for a great cause. Amen, somebody. And then the second piece that David helped me with, and I like when the characters of the Bible help me with stuff. David helped me with this is that we must be informed, well informed of our own faith story. I kind of feel sorry for folk who don't know their story. I really feel sorry for folk who think they pulled themselves up by their own bootstrap. You can't represent folk and be about a great cause if you don't have a faith story. Sometimes, some days, all you got is your faith story. As a pastor leading God's people, everybody not always went well. But at the end of the day, I have to remind myself of my faith story. And so you see what David, when he's being interviewed by Saul for the job of taking on the giant, you know, David didn't bring up his great pedigree of what school he went to, his family background, of any sense of entitlement. He told his faith story. How many of you are convicted on your faith story? That you know you didn't get here by yourself. That there's been some stuff that has taken place and happened in your life that you don't have an explanation for other than say, but God. And David goes on to tell the king, I don't know what the job description entails, but I can tell you that God's been with me for a long time, even when folk didn't even know my name. I was out there taking care of sheep and taking on lions and bears and whipping their tails, and I know it couldn't have just been me. I know it was something much greater than I. So I guess it just put me in the right place and the right position to be able to take on another giant cause. You ought to have your faith story. And I know I got to close. I know that's. I know I got to go. And I'm closing now. And Reverend Higgins, thank you for being here. And Sister Dorothy, I thank y'all for being here from Antioch with me. And I'm gonna try not to close as long as I close at Antioch. Be careful now. The other piece, if you're going to take on a giant cause, my dear brothers and sisters, you got to be willing to wear your own clothes. Y'all saw the king tried to put David in his clothes. You can't wear the folk clothes. You got to wear your own stuff. And in fact, I think Senator Anderson, I think it's a downright sin They try to wear other folks' stuff. When God has uniquely created you for such a time as this. Wear your own stuff. And that's what David was willing. I can't wear your stuff, King. I got to wear my own stuff. I wasn't wearing your stuff when I was conquering and whipping lions and bears and dealing with a daddy who chose his other sons over me. And I wasn't wearing that. I got to wear my stuff. And God is calling all of us, because God has uniquely given all of us something that's special, that give us something special to bring to the table for a giant cause. God needs you to wear your own clothes, your own stuff. I'm closing now. I promise I'm sure closing this time. Yeah, you know my bull. I got to get on my Bulldog. I'm a Georgia Tech fan, so every chance I get to jab at a Bulldog, I have to go get it. And I'm sorry for you Clemson fans as well. But one of the great stories of the national championship game with LSU, great story. This great story of the Cinderella quarterback that transferred and win the Heisman and win the national championship. But you know, it's somebody else on that LSU team that helped me, and I just love him to death because he had enough sense to wear his own clothes, and that's the head football coach, Ed Orgeron, straight out of Louisiana. He wasn't successful everywhere he went along the coaching way. Got fired from some jobs. And he learned from that. He tweaked some things, but can I say this for him? He never changed his clothes. And you see what God will do for you if you just keep your own stuff on? You may not get what you're gonna get right now. But if you keep wearing your own stuff, God's gonna get you where you're supposed to be. Let us pray. Gracious God, here we are again, your people who have been called out for a great giant cause, to serve your people. Help us, oh God, in our service to always allow the cause to be greater than our own personal agenda. Help us, oh God, to be well informed of our faith story and where you brought us from, how you made a way out of no way. And then finally, oh God, help us, oh God, to be comfortable in our own skin, wearing our own clothes, doing it your way. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Great job. Thank you, Governor. Yeah, that was great. Hey, even though he's gone, we'll bring you back. Did you run the ball?
No, I'm trying to.
Oh, you were lineman. All right. Steve, we're going to try to move it quick just to get us out by 11. So, yeah, no big deal. All right, we're going to ask that the Senate come back to order here, and we're going to keep moving on with the schedule. We've got a busy day and a tight timeline, so we're going to keep moving ahead. If we could cease all audible conversations in the chamber and go ahead and move on with our business. We're going to go ahead and proceed with the calendar today. At this time, I'd like to call forward the senator from the 6th to introduce our doctor of the day.
Good morning. I am honored to introduce Dr. Saida Omarova. Dr. Omarova is a family medicine and urgent care physician at Northside Family Medicine in Midtown Atlanta. She received her undergraduate degree from Emory University in Atlanta, and then she completed her family medicine residency at Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. In 2015, she returned to Atlanta, Georgia, and has been active since then in the Medical Association of Georgia and Georgia Academy of Family Physicians. We're so excited to have her today, and so please join me in welcoming and thanking Dr. Omarova.
Thank you for your hard work, Senators. Good luck, and I appreciate the opportunity today to help you. Thank you.
Are there any unanimous consents? Chair hears none. At this point, we're going to start our points of personal privilege. I'd like to take a second to just quickly remind us the timeline that we're on today. Is we've got the State of the State address, which starts promptly at 11 o'clock. And so we've got 29 minutes to get through a pretty aggressive schedule today. So I'm going to ask that if you do have a point of personal privilege, if you do, and it can't wait till next week, then just to be as brief as possible. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. Not too long ago, I was sitting in my son's high school guidance counselor office, and I overheard a student talking about registering for the SAT. She sighed resignedly and said, "But it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to college. I don't want to be in debt for the rest of my life." I thought to myself, she seems like an intelligent young woman and responsible. Despite her young age, she is trying to financially plan for her future. And my heart broke for her, because no matter what she decides, her future is going to be tough. I put on your desk today a chart. It looks like this, and I suggest you take it out. It compares the cost of tuition at the University of Georgia in 1981 to what it costs today. The comparison is astounding, but the chart tells another important story. In 1981, a young person could work full-time for 5 weeks and earn a full semester of tuition. That means a summer job paid for a year of college. Probably some of you remember those jobs that you had yourself. But now, students must work 34 weeks to pay for 1 semester. There aren't even enough weeks in the year of working full-time to pay today's tuition. And if today's students worked the same number of hours that a 1981 student worked, they'd need to earn $46.32 an hour. I mean, if they can do that, why bother going to school, right? My point is, students and families can't make ends meet when it comes to paying for college. The numbers on this chart are not sustainable for Georgia students and their families. So you might say, well, there's the Hope Scholarship. Did you know that a bachelor's degree at the University of Georgia with the Hope Scholarship now costs $18,000 a year, including fees and room and board? That's at least $72,000 for a bachelor's degree with the Hope Scholarship at a state school. Georgia's median annual household income is $56,000. To Georgia families, the cost of higher education is an impossible economic situation, an obstacle to the American dream. Since when did we decide it is okay to allow our taxpayer-funded colleges and universities to price out the very families who help pay for these schools to exist? So as we consider the budget, I encourage all of us to view the budget as a set of priorities because it documents what we value. What if we saw our young people's education an investment in the future of our state? After all, 2/3 of all jobs now require a post-secondary education. What if, within our budget, we encouraged our youngest and most motivated students to pursue as much post-secondary education as they can while still in high school? What if we further supported them so that we could guarantee that they could graduate debt-free? What if these debt-free young people became our future, our teachers, our CEOs, our scientists, who can build Georgia's future? What if higher education was considered a long-term investment in Georgia's economic growth rather than a budget suck? When we cut higher education dollars, we are investing in more poverty and more debt. I'll remind you all that the first word in our state motto is wisdom. I ask you then, where is the wisdom in cutting access to affordable higher education? Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of announcements I thought it'd be easier to make now than later on when time's really tight. Your budget books will be available at 12:30 for each member. You can, over at the budget office at CLOB, you can send a staff member for your budget book, but they'll need to sign for it. But those budget books will be available at 12:30. On your desk is a schedule of the budget hearing starting on Tuesday at 9:15. At 9 o'clock, the governor speaks right shortly thereafter. If you're on the Appropriations Committee, we urge you to attend those committee hearings. If you're not on the Appropriations Committee, you can certainly attend or listen to them in your office as well. There'll be a lot of good information that'll be dispensed next week as well. For the subcommittee chairs, we'll have a committee meeting at lunchtime on Tuesday as well. I've given each one a letter just a few minutes ago. Any questions, see me. We're looking forward to a very thorough and I think very substantive process this year. Thank you very much.
We have several more points of personal privilege. We are down to 23 minutes to get the chamber's business done today, or else we'll come back immediately following the State of the State address and continue. Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we all know, we enter into our budget conversation, and I was very proud this last session to earn the name Fiscal 48th. You all will remember I ask about fiscal notes for every bill. In the off-season, we have heard talk of the priorities of what we can and cannot afford for our state. We have a strong economy that every member of this body has earned the right to point to as a measure of our good work here. But more must be done. What's been most frustrating for me personally is seeing so much talk center around whether we can or cannot cut vital government services in this state. Georgians are already feeling the hurt from years of penny pinching, budget trimming, and our civil servants face greater expectations with fewer resources, from people in the Department of Motor Vehicles to every public school classroom. What I want to share with you is a recent poll conducted of likely voters in the state that was taken by the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, and I ask that you keep this in mind as we are going through the budget. 78% of Georgians oppose or strongly oppose budget cuts if they touch on public safety, health care, and education. 68% oppose cuts that involve layoffs. It is this body's worst-kept secret that many of the tax cuts and business incentives we have authorized are not making their way to the folks who need a break the most. It is my hope that through this session, as colleagues, we will hear each other's proposals to solve these crises, not as partisans, but as level-headed public servants of the people of this great state. I look forward to working with each of you this year and tackling our budget collaboratively as we confront these important challenges for our state, and I thank you for your service. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we didn't get here overnight. The two deliberative bodies decided that they were going to cut the tax rate for the highest in the state from 6% to 5.7%. And you were told by the feds that we're going to get this windfall that we didn't get. And here we are today, making it harder for young folks to go to school. We had hope, and hope started out based on one's income. And we decided we'd open the door, the floodgates. We're talking about dual enrollment. First of all, we need counselors who can help these kids determine what courses to take so when they go to technical school or college, they're going to count. But when we started dual enrollment, you didn't get a double FTE count. Now you cannot get it in the high schools unless they get double on FTE. We're the ones who can decide whether or not you got dual enrollment and how it's going to work and who's going to get paid. And then last of all, the House, in their wisdom, said that every member who was not a member of appropriations can come to the committee hearings and be paid per diem. In the Senate, that is not true. Now, how 14 senators going to break the state? We need to get on the right page. We didn't get here by some fluke. We did it to ourselves. And I kept wondering when I heard over the interim that you had a 4%. And I remember that the appropriations chair of both houses wanted department heads to come and talk to the committees and were told not to show up. Who showed up were the economists that said that we were $700 million in the hole. Something is wrong in Georgia when legislators refuse to accept the independence of doing their jobs. The 4%, to gin up enough money so the governor can make the teacher pay raises. You file for a waiver. And then the first thing you do is cut the money, the EEOC, for them on the transportation to take the folks to the jobs that are required to go to work. We make those decisions in this deliberative body, and we ought to own up to it.
All right, we will move on. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked to remove SR 551 from the consent calendar, privileged resolutions.
Mr. Secretary, will you read the caption?
Senate Resolution Number 551 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others, a resolution recognizing February 12, 2020 as Dyslexia Day at the state capitol and urging schools, local educational agencies, and the state educational agency to address the profound educational impact of dyslexia and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there a senator from the 9th has the right to remove this? And Senate Resolution 551 is removed from the consent calendar of privileged resolutions. We will now take up the vote for the remainder of the privileged resolutions that are on your desk, minus Senate Resolution 551. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. So for the purposes of making sure we change the date on this and making it correct, I move that we table SR 551, please.
The senator from the 9th has moved that we table SR 551. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the resolution is tabled. In preparation for the state of the state, at this time, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to finish our business before session or before the state of the state address. We've only got 14 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and proceed. At this time, I'd like to appoint the following senators to serve as a committee of escorts to escort the governor to the joint session of the state address and begin making movements towards that direction. Senator from the 49th, the 30th, 41st, 19th, 17th, 4th, 15th, 37th, and 53rd. If y'all would start making your movements towards the governor's office, that would be appreciated. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? The chair hears none. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Because of the delay, I move that the Senate proceed to the hall of the House of Representatives for a joint session, and upon dissolution of the joint session, that the Senate recess pursuant to H.R. 879 until and reconvene at the conclusion of the state of the state.
Majority Leader has moved that this body stand in recess until the conclusion of the state address. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and we stand in recess.